Thank you. All right. Look, I'll start with some questions about the Melbourne Airport Rail, and in particular starting with the allocation from last year's budget of the $30 million towards the development of the Melbourne Airport Rail business case. So I want to know basically what is happening with that $30 million at the moment. Where is it sitting? How much of it's been spent? What's it being spent on, etc.
Thank you, Senator. I'll ask my colleague, Mr Isles, to step in here. I mean, in broad terms, the preliminary business case is well underway, and we expect that to be completed around September, October this year. The preliminary business case, and Mr Isles can talk about how much of that funding has so far been drawn on by Victoria.
So Victoria estimate that they'll spend around $3 million before the end of the financial year. And then obviously money further after the financial year to complete this preliminary business case.
So is the money still sitting with the Commonwealth?
That's correct, Senator. We're still waiting on Victoria to provide their project proposal report. That would allow us to provide the funding to Victoria, but they're accruing the...
Okay, so as you understand it, so the work is being done by Victoria?
That's correct.
So it's Victorian officials that are undertaking the work, but they haven't yet called upon any money?
That's correct,
And
Senator.
they'll call upon $3 million by the end of the financial year, and presumably they are expecting to require the full 30, so that...
Certainly, Senator. I think that given the Australian government's commitment to up to $5 billion, that the $30 million will feed into the process to do the detailed business case as well.
To do the detailed business case. So what is expected to be produced after that $30 million has been spent? Is that not a detailed business case?
So it won't get you to the detailed engineering assessments, for example. So the detail around the sort of the specific engineering or geotechnical requirements, those sorts of things. So that will need to be further assessed.
Right. So is it just one particular model of airport rail that's being looked at in this business case?
By model, Senator?
Well, I mean, there are a whole range of different ways of providing airport rail to Melbourne Airport.
Senator, the preliminary business case that's being conducted now is looking at a range of options for how to essentially deliver the best solution for access to the airport through rail in Melbourne, and that includes a number of different routes and options that could be considered. So we will essentially do an options analysis at this first stage. Then once that's completed, governments will take a decision on a preferred route or routes that they want to see further developed in a much more detailed sense through, as Mr Hile said, the geotechnical work and the market testing, and that will then go into the detailed business case. So we essentially narrow the options down at the first stage and assess those, and then move through to a more detailed business case.
So it's actually not a business case then. So it's a bit of a different definition of a business case compared with what you usually talk about with a business case, which is for a particular project.
I think the Infrastructure Australia has a model essentially where you work towards the business case through an options analysis, strategic assessment, and move forward. And so the preliminary business case is going part way to the full business case, and then it'll be completed once we have the final route.
So in my understanding, you're essentially spending this $30 million on that options analysis rather than a business case for a particular project.
Well, it's certainly supporting that analysis, but it's feeding into the full business case as well. So the work that's being done now forms the starting point and the beginning of the business case, essentially.
But it's being done for more than one project.
Well, it's one solution, if you like, one transport solution, but a range of options that could be considered.
Yeah, it's one problem or one issue, but there are any number of ways. How many different options are being looked at in this business case?
Well, a range of options being looked at. There was, I think, three key routes that were identified as part of the announcement that have emerged from previous studies, which have been identified in the past as the most likely solutions. That's clearly where the work is being focused, but essentially all options are on the table at that early stage.
So can you articulate what those three are then, please?
Yes, so there is what's called the East Albion route. There is essentially a route which comes down through Maribyrnong, and there's also one route which goes from the airport further out to the east and then comes down through Broadmeadows, Pascoe Vale, and
right, so that
comes in
via the Atwood land, I think it is. I know it quite well, and then connecting up with
through
the
Essendon and Ascot Vale. Yes.
from Broadmeadows.
Yeah, and there are variants of those routes, but in broad terms, those three are the primary.
So in
routes.
terms of the route that goes through Maribyrnong, are there two versions of that being assessed? There's one version that would pick up a number of locations, e.g. the High Point Shopping Centre and the Maribyrnong Defence Site, and I understand there's also another option of basically having a direct tunnel, essentially pretty much straight to the airport.
I think it's a fair characterisation. I mean, there's a range of options around
Yes.
that, but that's a fair characterisation.
So are they both under consideration in that?
At that first stage, yes.
Right. And is the monorail proposal, is that under consideration as an option also?
Senator, I think that there's an opportunity for that to obviously be explored, but as Mr Yeaman has suggested, the Victorian government has previously assessed 4 routes that in the detail that he explained, and certainly there's an opportunity through the work that we're doing to update the work that they've done previously to assess those options.
But my understanding is that there hasn't been an assessment done by government of the monorail option. Not
to my knowledge.
No, and so can I clarify? You're saying that that's not being done under this options analysis.
It's not that it's not being done. It's the route options are still being assessed at what will be included. So certainly that there are a range of different options that potentially could be included.
Hang on, I'm still very confused. I mean, we're talking about a range of options that are being looked at and being progressed forward, basically to a certain extent, in order to then make a assessment of which is the preferred option. With Mr Yeaman, we just talked through a number of them. The monorail wasn't included as one of those. So where would the opportunity be for it to be included in the mix?
So it certainly can be included in the mix now. So the four I highlighted, Senator, are the ones that have had the most planning work done to date, and there is, they have emerged from earlier processes, so they're the ones that are drawing the most attention, if you like, through the options analysis. But certainly the intention is through the options analysis to look at a wider range, and if there are private proposals, if there are other proposals that are out there, through Victoria and with our cooperation, they will be assessed at a high level, and if they look prospective, then they will be assessed in more detail through this process. But so the reason I focused on those 4 is because they're the ones that have been most publicly discussed in the past, and most work has been done on them. But other options can also be considered through this process.
Right, and so the timing on the completion of the process, when do you expect to have this?
So later this year. I've said September, October, but late this year.
Right, and so if the monorail was going to be considered as part of that, is there a particular period of time that would be needed? I mean, say it was being came up and somebody was suggesting look at include it, and it was August, it obviously might be a bit late.
Yeah. So Senator, I'm personally not aware. It may be that the Victorians already have access to that information and are starting to draw on that assessment. I'm just not personally aware how much that's been considered in the process to date. We can have a look at that and take it on notice. So it may already be in the discussion. I might just not be aware of it.
In my question on notice about the business case study, the terms of reference for the study were not supplied to me. I was told they weren't publicly available. Why is that the case?
Senator, we sought Victoria's agreement, and they preferred that they not be published.
So the Commonwealth would be happy to publish them if the Victorian government agreed to it?
Certainly, that we provided the objectives of the business case to give you some clarity around that.
Yes. So okay. So if we got the Victorian government to agree, well then you would be happy to release the terms of reference. Yes. Okay. You have to say yes because Hansard doesn't pick up nods.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. But can you, other than the objectives for the study were pretty broad, can you give me any more details about what the parameters for assessment are going to be used to determine which of these options would proceed through to be the preferred option?
So, Senator, there's a process that's involved in refining those assessment criteria. That's obviously work that we've done in cooperation with Victoria. We'd need to take that on notice because I'm not sure whether that's been fully completed at this stage.
Right, so you haven't yet started assessing the projects against each other then?
certainly the broad overarching assessment sort of criteria. I think that obviously there are certain chapters of the document that have been written already, such as the sort of the underlying data and assumptions and those sorts of things.
Yeah, but I'm interested with the parameters by which each of the options will be compared against each other, and so the selection criteria essentially.
Yes. So other than obviously the broad objectives that we've provided in response to the question on notice, we'd have to take that additional on notice as well.
I think, Senator, while I agree, the points read quite high level and broad. Essentially, these are pretty standard metrics or measures by which we look at these sort of projects. What are the broader benefits it can bring to the network? Where are the economic opportunities, attached to the various options? What does it do for the passenger experience and the service offering that's there attached? I mean, these are pretty standard transport metrics which people like the Transport Body of Victoria and ourselves are well versed in going through. So these really do reflect the objectives that you've got in the question on notice. Do reflect quite well the measure by which the different options are going to be assessed against each other, and that work, as Mr. Hiles said, has started.
Okay.